Welcome to the Serious TV Drama Podcast. I'm Scott, and joining me once again tonight, the Technicolor dreamer to my Cleveland my black and white redeemer, it's Brian. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Scott. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Don't know where my head was at with that intro. I love that the episode we're talking about actually gave an opportunity for somebody, compare and contrast things I could have used for the intro. It's like, I'm not going to use any of those. I know you've been doing well. I know your birthday's coming up soon. We won't say what the number is unless you want to.
A couple of days left of being of any valuable demographic whatsoever, and we'll leave it at that.
There you go. You get to join my club. So you got that to look forward to. So I know you've been enjoying the last few days. I've been kind of holed up with the foot at home, so I've just been binging a few seasons of the next show that's notched an episode in the greatest TV drama episodes of all time. I will talk about that at the end of the podcast, as well as a few other minor matters relating to that, because that's not what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk about the 9th episode of Fargo Season 4, which was titled East West. And you believe this was the one that Noah Hawley was referring to as the, what was it? How did you refer to it again?
He said it was like it was the big deal wow moment of the season.
Okay, I'm guessing I know what moment he's referring to, and we'll get there. So let's just take care of some housekeeping with the episode before we start going into it line by line. No. The episode was directed by the pretty damn good Michael Uppendahl. I mean, if you watch TV, you should know who Michael Uppendahl is. He's previously directed things like, he's actually directed several episodes from seasons 1 and 3 of Fargo. Three of the episodes from the first season of Legion. Ooh la la. And of course, most closest to my heart, what exists of it at this point, he directed no less than 11 episodes of Mad Men from every season except the first for some reason. Maybe he was busy. And the episode, of course, was written by Noah Hawley, although there was a co-writing credit this time around bestowed upon a guy who's usually a staff writer, Lee Edward Colston. I like that his credits, he's often referred to as Lee Edward Colston II. Not on this podcast. So we get to this episode. Before we even get to this is a true story, we get a little quote on screen. Or does it happen before or after? Doesn't matter. Who cares? And the quote on the screen is, "Life is nothing but a competition to be the criminal rather than the victim." The quote was from Bertrand Russell. Now, for those of you who are wondering who Bertrand Russell was, of course, that's the fast-talking, wisecracking co-star of His Girl Friday with Cary Grant. Wait, that's Rosalind Russell. Bertrand Russell, right. That's the Nobel Prize-winning British logician, I believe is how you pronounce it, and philosopher as well. He's also a member of the House of Lords. Very important figure. His extensive writings and theories in everything from logic and mathematics to his well-known anti-war stance. He influenced so many varied, noteworthy historical figures. I'm telling you, including the likes of Noah Chomsky, Robert Oppenheimer, Che Guevara, Kurt Vonnegut, and Isaac Asimov. And that's just a few of them. You look them up online, you'll see this whole laundry list of people. It's like, oh my God. Very influential dude. So that's the quote we start off with. Are we going to talk about what that quote means? No, because, I think it's fairly self-explanatory compared to most things in Fargo. We do begin with this image of debris. And although we don't know what this debris signifies at the beginning of the episode, we certainly know what the debris means by the end of the episode. But they do this cute little thing where the camera is moving through the debris, and we actually see a book, and the book is The History of True Crime in the Wild West. And we see, the torn pages throughout the debris, and we actually enter the story through a photograph of one of those pages. And there we are back in Kansas, 1950. So it was kind of an inventive way to start off the episode, but it's Fargo, Legion, Noah Hawley stuff. You expect them to be inventive with how they do these things. And we start off with Leon, and he's standing at this monument to the discovery of Pluto. And we know he's got somebody in the trunk, and this somebody is apparently helping him track down Calamita. And they go, and he eventually drives from that spot, and he ends up at this little filling station, and he has this lovely conversation with the old dude who's running the filling station. And eventually he offers to help paint the walls there while waiting for Calamita, because that's who he's trying to track down, as I just mentioned just 30 seconds ago. He's waiting for Calamita to pass by, and apparently the guy in the trunk is going to help him too. I got a little confused. Confused is too strong. I remember just wondering for the moment, the guy in the trunk. So the impression I get is that he was somehow one of Fada's men. Originally, I thought he was one of the guys from Fargo, because he's not really speaking with he doesn't have any kind of Italian about him. But the way he speaks, it still sounds like he's one of Fada's guys. I mean, was that what you thought? I wasn't really clear on that.
I thought he was maybe a guy from somewhere else that had given him guns, because at one point, Loy's man says, like, where were you going? And he says, they said they were going to Kansas or something. So he didn't appear to be a local. He appeared to be from somewhere else. Now, I don't know if he's like part of, maybe an extended part of the Italian group somewhere else in another city.
I figure he has to, because the way he was talking about the Cannon's men and what they wanted to do, it sounded like he was on the opposing side. Obviously, he had him in the trunk. So, I mean, again, it's really not that important, as we find out within a couple of minutes. It really doesn't matter. But I was just wondering about it at the time. I did like the little compare and contrast, where the fact is, obviously Leon knows how to paint the fence. He's doing it the right way, up and down strokes, in a logical, orderly way. And the guy is painting in a very stupid, piss poor, half-assed way, like a big smear here and a big round. That is not how you paint the wall, sir. That is not how you paint the wall.
Right. Well, this episode, as we go through it, I did make several notes and notice the attempt to show where this is black and white. There's dividing lines.
Yep.
The episode, this whole season has dealt with the issue of black versus white. Mm-hmm. So it's a bold choice, but we see Loy's man has one eye that's clouded and one eye that's normal, something that will be called back in the episode later by another character. We see lots of this sort of dichotomous division throughout the episode.
Right.
And I did want to mention the one thing. I was curious about several things. This is one of those episodes that if we had time to digest, they put a lot of stuff in here that probably you could research to look at. There's a lot of stuff that made me curious. The Pluto landmark, I believe, was an actual Kansas historical landmark, because I did find real quick, in the few minutes after I finished and you and I got online, the gentleman who discovered Pluto was from Kansas, and so there's a marker there commemorating him. He also mapped quite a bit of the solar system and became an important astronomer throughout his career. So I think that was actually a real historical marker, as opposed to a historical marker which will appear shortly.
Right. Oh, and by the way, I did misspeak. You reminded me when you mentioned his eye. That's not. I didn't mean to refer to the guy as Leon. That's not Leon. That character, that's actually Omi, or his full name is Omi Sparkman, because obviously Leon doesn't have a clouded eye, and that guy is way cooler than Leon has proven to be on the show so far. The guy, and initially you think, this guy might last for a while because they're giving him an opportunity. Noah Hawley, as well as other writers, but they love to give a character the opportunity to tell a little story. Like a fable, something with a moral, something, whatever. We've seen it on this season a few times already. And he starts telling this whole story about a king turtle. He's trying to make the case for how, the guys on the bottom, get crushed and, they have to, kind of fend for themselves and look out for themselves, whatever. Of course, he pretty much meets his end before he even gets to really finish the story, because they see Calamita showing up. He starts to make a run for it, and pop, he's dead. And that's when we cut to the rabbi and Satchel. They're driving down the same road, but apparently it's a day earlier. And once again, because just to, another little historical thing they like to throw in here, on the radio you hear, I believe it's Senator Joe McCarthy. That's when he's railing on his infamous list of communists, that when they were trying to expose all these people back then.
And that did happen in 1950, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. I forget we're doing a podcast. I think you're just telling me. It's like, you don't got to tell me about Joe McCarthy.
I know you know. I will add before you move on just something I Shazammed. The version of Will the Circle Be Unbroken that played in this was a version by a group called the Southern Tornadoes. So if you had your Shazam on, there was a tell coming. So,
well, you kind of should have figured out, since they love being silly. Hawley does, with his nods to, famous cinema and whatever. And if you're going to have a season that takes place entirely in Kansas, and then you start off with, this, you get a second in color, but it's black and white. I was already thinking, like, we're going to get a Wizard of Oz thing at some point here. I think I have a vague memory of what I saw in that trailer last week, which was very Wizard of Oz, and it certainly was. But they're heading to they're going to Liberal, Kansas. I haven't looked at a map. I don't know if there's an actual place called Liberal, Kansas.
It is a real place.
Wow.
And it got its name from a man who would often give water to people that pass by on the plains, and they would say, well, that's very liberal of you. And oddly enough, this was the only other thing I looked up, that the Land of Oz exhibit was placed there after originally being opened in Topeka, was later moved by the creator there, and it features a replica of Dorothy's house and a yellow brick road where the bricks are supplied and named for famous people.
Oh, wow, look at that. So, as they continue down that road, they pass by this unfinished billboard where it's like maybe half done or so, or maybe 3/4 done. And the only words you see on the future is, and that's it. I thought that was a cute touch. I didn't realize it was actually going to play a part later in the episode in a most amusing way. It's actually pretty funny there too. But they finally arrive at this Barton Arms Hotel. I like one of the first things that Satchel says, "What's that smell?" Fresh air.
Yes, and we get a Coens Brothers callback, Barton Arms, Miller's Crossing.
There you go. Which then led to, I always forget about Barton Fink when we talk about
Barton Fink.
Yeah. Another one of those movies that just, anyway, I'm not going to get on that rant. So they're at the hotel, and that's where they get hit with an odd set of questions before it can be determined what room they'll be staying in, either be on the east wing or the west wing of this hotel. It's Plymouth Rock or Sutter's Mill, Eisenhower or McCarthy, Old Testament or New Testament. I remember thinking it was funny. His nickname is he's known as Rabbi. You'd think he'd be picking Old Testament, but no, they went with New Testament. And we then find out the reason for this is that the owners of the hotel are these sisters who have been pretty much kind of warring with each other, although they don't care much for the colored folk apparently. And then you see there's a line that divides the whole place. This is a gag I've seen before on TV shows. It usually tends to be something I see more on a comedy than a drama, but they went for it here.
I was trying to think, the comedy that did this that sticks out in my mind, was that an episode of Three's Company that they did that they divided the apartment? Do you recall the sort of 70s sitcom? I mean, it's a fairly common gag.
if, they very well might have done it on something like Three's Company, that wouldn't have been what would have come to my mind, but I do believe that might have been one of them. It sounds very possible. I feel like there was even a point where, there was a dividing line on the table, and where things were on the table, what someone could have to eat or something. Again, yeah. And then there's probably a few others. If we were recording a day later, I probably would have looked up TV shows that did this gag, but I can't think of, where else we've seen it before.
But you clearly have the Wicked Witch of the East and the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yes, there you go. So we get to the room, and the rabbi has to go into town because there's some money that he had stashed there at some point in the past. And he leaves Satchel with a knife to defend himself in case anything should happen while he's gone. And apparently he's had a little bit of training as far as, where you stab a person first, second, and third. Rabbi gets to town, and it turns out the location where he had stashed money, I guess it used to be a feed store, and he must have hidden the money away in a wall. Now it's a place that sells dinette sets.
Yeah.
So he pretty much, he walks in, finds out, he walks out again. Back at the hotel, Satchel is listening to the people outside his room, but then he keeps hearing the scratching at the closet, and he approaches the closet, and it's a dog. A dog whose name turns out to be Rabbit, which is Rabbi with a T, in case anyone doesn't know how to spell.
Yeah, the dog, I said, if you want to think about sort of kids' adventures, I mean, it almost looked like a wardrobe, like a dog coming out of a wardrobe. And so you've got, a couple of fantasy illusions there. And so you have Toto, who add, what's the most common letter in Toto? It's T. Add that to the rabbi, and you get Rabbit.
Yeah, add the T to T-O. Didn't know my name.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll stop that one. So yeah, I mean, they could have went even more on the nose and made it like the exact same breed, but it's a terrier. It's a similar kind of a dog. The dog runs out of the room. Satchel chases after it, and that's when he meets Hunk Swindell, a man with the gift of gab who likes to ask questions, and he likes to refer to the works of Dale Carnegie as far as, I think it's like how to win friends and influence people, that whole concept.
Yep.
And then shortly thereafter, we meet a younger guy who walks into the room. Again, great names. Hickory J. Milch shows up, and he's talking about his dreams of going to Texas because of oil fields and such. So again, I'm thinking it's black and white. Oh, we're hearing about these people who are, they're all traveling and they all have these aspirations and things they want to do and whatever. It's like, oh, I'm feeling really Wizard of Ozzy here. The rabbi eventually returns, and he has a solution in mind. Later, they're at the dinner table, and that's when we meet a few other guests. All of whom I feel there's something just a little odd or creepy going on with. Other than the two gentlemen we just mentioned, you've got the pastor and his wife, I mean mother, which they play on later on when Satchel spots them in their room, and it's like, wait. Is she your mother or is she your wife? Because that seems very wifely there. That's weird. And then
or was he from Indiana and this was a Mike Pence thing where your wife is mother?
Oh, it would not put it past him to have done that. That sounds good to me. But she doesn't make a point of saying Indiana. You're right on that one. And then there's this fellow who's the major, and this girl that's with him who's his, it's his niece, Millie. But the way they speak and the way he introduces her, I was going, is she really your niece? Oh, something's kind of bothering me about this. And, and of course he has an eye patch because, you need to have some character with an eye patch somewhere. And we also meet the two sisters briefly, who are both clearly hard of hearing. They're doing the thing where they have like the horn in their ear trying to talk to each other. So it's all, and I was actually getting worried, like, okay, I hope we don't spend too much time with these two characters, because that's going to be funny at first, but get kind of annoying if I have to sit through that for an entire episode. But fortunately, we didn't get too much of that. And of course, they are waiting for the rabbi and Satchel to be introduced, and the rabbi refers to them as Duffy and his ward Colt.
Yes, Colt.
What do you say? he's an Irishman, and the Negroes his ward or something like that. And again, the table scene, I feel, I mean, it just feels like it's just there just for entertainment purposes, just have a little bit of fun. There's an argument about the proper blessing before they eat. Swindell, of course, he's always the guy who asks questions, so he keeps asking, the rabbi questions about where they're going, and he makes a reference to heading to Sioux Falls, which, we know Sioux Falls has certainly been mentioned on Fargo a number of times over the last few seasons. But he kind of stiffens up, doesn't really want to answer any more questions. And at one point, when I think it's when the niece wants the major to tell her a story. I don't know if she wants him to tell him a story at the dinner table, which is just weird. He makes a reference to Goldilocks, and that's when Swindell jumps in and he starts talking about what the original idea for Goldilocks was, which was with witches, not bears. So there you go, witches. Wizard of Oz. We got to see witches there. And of course, you could even sort of make the sort of, Goldilocks to Dorothy kind of connection as well, especially when he starts talking about what the thematic idea behind Goldilocks was. He refers to it as being like an outsider in search of himself. And the story's got no ending. Something we all have to worry about when we watch a TV show. We don't want to have a story with no ending.
Right.
And afterwards, I thought it was funny. I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but just before we cut to commercial, we briefly see the rabbi and Satchel in their room. I think Satchel's fast asleep, but the rabbi's just lying there. And I think he had mentioned before they went into the hotel something along the lines of sleeping with one eye open. And he looks like he's sleeping with both eyes open.
Right, and that's an allusion to the plaque outside that I actually paused my DVR and read, that said that house had been the home to a group of serial killers, or it was in the vicinity of people who had a bed and breakfast that would murder people back in the 1800s. Mm-hmm. And so when he says sleep with one eye open, and then later we get, some Coen Brothers high strangeness with the guests in the way things are going on. But you see clearly this is a different kind of place. And
right.
There's weirdness going on. But you see that he's not completely at ease there.
No, not at all. And the next day, he heads back into town to do something about the money. I love that he passes by the billboard again and stops and he asks about it because he's annoyed that there's a guy sitting there next to it who's supposed to be working on it. And he's like, what is that supposed to mean? He's like, you'll have to wait till it's finished. Well, then finish it already. You know what I'm saying? The guy's like, if I'm finishing, I'm out of a job. Which is pretty much a good commentary on anyone who does city or state jobs for the government in construction or anything. That's why they take forever because we're going to lose our job. I thought that.
I love that character because he's a minor character and he becomes so verbose throughout the episode and has big high-minded things to say that I thought the weirdness, the way the shootout happens, everything that happens in this episode, this was one of the most Coen things. And that guy was a very Coen type character. Like I think you've said before, that's almost the kind of character that a John Polito or somebody might be in that would be a slightly bigger role, mm-hmm. but just gets to talk about like how you believe in time. And the billboard was a great device, but also as it was funny later, it becomes poignant. And I think what I like about the way this episode was structured, going back to the dinner for just a second,
sure, is
the story of Goldilocks is told by a relatively minor character, and it resonates with both the rabbi and with Satchel, mm-hmm. but it's even more so for Satchel because Rabbi Milligan's not also an outsider because of his race, and that's made clear throughout the episode. So I thought for those reasons, this was a very Coen episode in that dinner scene was uncomfortable but amusing. Mm-hmm. And then when we go straight from that to the bedroom to what happens next, then from that's where the action really propels on through the rest of the episode.
Right. I think I'm going to stick with, there's the famous New York City police sirens in the background, or ambulances, whatever they are. No, it's probably a fire engine, actually. So I'll get to the second thing with the billboard later on, because they're in the car, back in the car. We actually hear a little bit about the shootout at the slaughterhouse on the radio before he switches it off. And then we realize he's heading back to that store, the store that sells the dinette sets. And now we see the two brothers that own the store. And I'm noticing kind of like when we were talking about, like, the dividing line or the splitting. We also have a lot of doubling in this episode. We've got the sisters own the hotel. We've got the brothers own the store. You have a lot of that kind of thing going on here. I also liked one of the lines that one of them said, referred to the guy as, referring to Rabbi when he's describing him as a poison pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Which is funny because one could say, well, pretty much figured out not that many years later, cigarettes are actually poison to begin with. So it's kind of redundant to say that. I'm talking to someone who just had a cigarette like 45 minutes ago. So the brother that we hadn't met before, he's ready if he should show up again because he shows that he's got a gun stuffed in his belt. But too late, the rabbi gets the drop on them from behind. And that's when we find out the story of when they had bought the store, and of course they found the money in the wall. And, you can't disagree with them. What else are they supposed to have done with it? Of course they're going to take the money and keep it. And plus, hey, even though it's a different location, that's also a Fargo tradition. Finding money that someone else stashed somewhere and then building your little store, your little fortune on it. I mean, that was, go back to season 1 with Oliver Platt finding the money from the movie,
Exactly. And I think that was part of a plot in Blood Simple, the very first Coen Brothers movie. Mm-hmm. But the thing I thought in this of a wall being moved, this was almost like a reverse Lady Killers. Instead of him having to drill in to get it, like the wall was just moved and somebody else already had the money he was going back to get.
Right.
And I do have sympathy, but I have a question for you, and maybe I just missed something. Rabbi Milligan's been with this group for such a long time. What did he do, and how did he get a bunch of money to stick in that wall? Years ago?
Don't know. That's a good question. When would he have had the opportunity to have that kind of nest egg, which I doubt he just saved up and stashed there? It sounds like something he, somehow money he just had suddenly acquired and then stashed there. And if he was always working under them, when would he have had the opportunity to? What would have happened? I don't know. Gosh, I wish I had a good answer for that. It would make this podcast so much better than it is at this moment.
No, I mean, I don't know that there is an answer, but I mean, I just accepted it. But as I thought about it, I thought, because when he pulls that wad out of the bag, I mean, for that time period, I'm sure that's enough for him to get a start with him and Satchel. But $5,000, that's a ton of money.
Oh yeah, and that looked like maybe a tenth of that. That looked closer to maybe $500, especially when you saw it was a bundle of money, but you saw on one side it was like a single, the other side was like a 5 or something.
Right.
So if it's all small bills, even that thick a thing, it's not going to be that much money. I mean, it's 1950, it's not 2020, so it'll get them a little ways, but not as far as he would have liked them to have gone. While he's having this scene with the brothers, and he's trying to somehow probably demand more from them or something, which probably is not going to go really over that well. Meanwhile, outside, a cop pulls up by the car where Satchel's hanging out with the dog, and he's pretty much hassling him to get out of the car because, probably hasn't seen, a young black kid sitting in a car in this town before. who knows what he could be up to in that cop's mind, of course. But the rabbi shows up just in time, which pretty much indicates he doesn't end up shooting either of the store-owning brothers. Doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would have done that anyway. But he would have cracked him one. He did crack the guy one, didn't he?
Yeah, he cracked the brother with the gun.
Yeah, the butt of the gun. So back at the hotel where Satchel is insisting on wanting to keep the dog, and the rabbi, doesn't need another mouth to feed. But he then finds out that it's Satchel's birthday. So he eventually leaves to go find him like a candy bar or a cupcake or something. And of course he finds out the only place nearby, it's 8 or 9 miles away, which is the filling station. Part of me was thinking, there's no place in town that's like a bakery or a store. You have to go to the filling station is closer, but okay, I'll go along with it. He passes by that billboard again. And now it's filled in as the future is now. I'm pretty sure everyone watching it knew that it was going to say the future is now. That's kind of a well-known, billboardy phrase kind of thing. And this is what you were talking about. When he starts talking to the guy who had painted the billboard, and I had to write it down. Just, I don't know, maybe it's a statement on the underlying unreliability of time or testimony along the lines of seize the day.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing that was kind of driving me crazy about this moment and the one earlier, because I love them, but they were shot, they maintained them in such long shots, I couldn't clearly see the actor who was the guy working on the billboard. And I don't know if that fellow is credited on IMDb, because they only have, I think 5 or 6 names there, and I don't think that guy is one of them. I'm just looking. We've got Constant, we've got Omi, we've got Hickory, we've got an officer, we've got an orderly, we've got Milvin Gillis, who I think is the guy in the hotel room. No, they don't credit the fellow here as of yet, because it probably was not him. In fact, I'm probably like 80 to 90% sure it wasn't that actor. But for a moment there, maybe in the first scene with him, I thought it was the actor oh God, I should have looked up his name while I'm doing this. He's been in a number of things, but his Coen Brothers connection, he was the actor who played Marge's husband. You know what I'm talking about? But he's taller, balding guy. He's shown up a few times on American Horror Story and a lot of things over the years. Very good, solid actor. I just can't think of what his name is off the top of my head. I'm actually
Dennis something.
I'm gonna look it up just because I'm annoyed at myself not remembering his name. It is. Give me a second. This is such good podcasting, people.
That's okay, man. I mean, that's the beauty of getting this stuff out is talking about it and not researching it to death and just giving our immediate reaction to what we've seen and how we feel about it. Not much reflection.
Yep.
It is it Dennis?
I'm looking.
Something.
No, John Carroll Lynch.
Oh, okay.
John Carroll Lynch. That's what I was trying to remember. He played Norm Gunderson. It probably was not that actor. But for a minute there, I thought, I don't know why, but I thought it was him. And, he actually has a Fargo connection of all things. So, and he's also got a connection of working on FX shows. So, figured you never know. Anyway.
Did you like the reveal? I liked the reveal that it was his birthday because he'd shown his first frustration with Rabbi. Mm-hmm. He's always been, cooperative and listened to him. And for the first time you see him get frustrated and hit the floor.
Yep.
And when he says that, Rabbi gets it. Like he understands. And I thought throughout this, the story of Satchel is so tragic that finding this is his birthday and all he wants is that dog.
Right.
That's pretty, I just wanted one thing. And it's kind of sad that I thought as I watched, I thought, isn't it kind of sad that it's his birthday and he doesn't talk about his parents or going home or, all he wants is that dog. And otherwise he completely trusts Rabbi Milligan.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. The other thing I about the just at the end of the billboard scene when the guy's talking, when he talks about how he finds himself at a crossroads now as far as his life without a job, and of course one could also look at the show. I mean, the characters here, well, they're all at a crossroads now, not just literally, but figuratively, because where they're going to go from this point on, especially after what happens in the next few minutes. Because the rabbi shows up back at the filling station, and we can already see it's getting increasingly windy, as if there's a bad storm imminent. And then we automatically feel really bad because we see that someone has killed the old dude who ran the station. Obviously, we would assume it was Calamita. And then when the rabbi kind of inches over and looks through the window into the back room, he can see that Calamita has a gun on Omi, who's like on the ground there. Spots Rabbi, takes a shot at him through the glass. Rabbi tries to run back to his car, and he takes another shot at him. Wings him pretty badly. And we have this great moment as the rabbi is struggling to get a grip on his gun. Calamita's about to shoot him when he gets shot by Omi. He swings around, but Omi is out of bullets, and he gets blown away. And I use the phrase "blown away" deliberately because once Calamita turns back to the rabbi, who looks like he's about to squeeze off a shot, when a piece of debris flies right past him and knocks the gun out of his hands, like, oh, good Lord. But the rabbi looks skyward, and behind Calamita, you see that big, scary spectacle of that huge, fast-approaching tornado, which is just sucking up everything in its path, including Calamita's car, and then Calamita, and then eventually the rabbi himself.
Yeah, I really like this. And again, think about the episode title and what we've seen. On the screen at one point in the shootout, Calamita is flanked on both sides by black and white. Mm-hmm. And the choices were so artistic and well done. But that in Omi dies, we assume, I say assume, I'm not assuming Calamita and Rabbi are dead. In real life they would be, but there's a chance they are. I think we'll see Satchel find Rabbi Milligan next week. That's my guess, but the way this was shot, that one scene where the tornado's moving and it almost looks like the tornado's wearing a GoPro camera, because it just stays perfectly in sync with the tornado as it moves and you see the piece of the building come apart. Mm-hmm. Was great. And I wanted to ask you that in the shootout where Rabbi Milligan is leaned against the car trying to move his arm, I'm sure that's reminiscent of classic cinema, of something in classic cinema. It resonated with me, but I wasn't sure what. And I'm also wondering if the scene of Rabbi Milligan is sort of the camera stays on him as he starts to spin. If that was an homage to something, because I couldn't pull it out in my head. But I wondered if either of those things resonated with you as an homage to anything in particular. The rabbi's wound, I guess, looked like it might have been specific to his arm, and that's why he was having such a problem with the gun. Because it looked like that what his issue was, because that's his shooting arm and shooting hand, whatever. Right.
Have I specifically seen that? It's not ringing a bell. There's certainly been a number of times when someone's been shot and they're struggling to then try to shoot back or something, and that, you can find that all the live long day. And I'm sure, if I looked this up, maybe there would be something very specific they were referencing there, but nothing really, rings out to me. As far as the way they did the shot of the rabbi being sucked into the tornado, but we stay with him, that style is very reminiscent of a kind of a camera technique that we've seen used in a lot of movies. Spike Lee does it a lot, especially in his earlier films, where it's like the person is stationary and everything is kind of happening around them, as wherever they may be moving, whatever. There's a few other examples of that as well. Just Spike Lee just seems to be the one that, comes first to mind. And I kind of liked how they did that because there's the disorienting thing where we don't realize what's happening for the first couple of seconds and realize, now I know what's happening. Okay.
Right.
And yeah, I was in that mindset where even though I'm fairly sure that's it for him, I'm still hoping against hope that it's not. I'm hoping that there's still something more, but if it's not, it's certainly an inventive way to lose the character. Just because the way the episode ends with Satchel, it feels like we're not going to get him reuniting with anybody at this point. I could be wrong. We only have 2 episodes left. It's just the way the episode ends, especially when I'm looking at the billboard, the future is now, and then heading down the road with the dog makes me think that might be it. But I could be wrong. I'm
but again, calling back to what you said earlier has made me think, as you said that, at that billboard is where that guy said, now I'm at a crossroads. Mm-hmm. Now Satchel's at that crossroads.
Exactly.
Like, he's lost Rabbi Milligan. Rabbi Milligan was at that crossroads. And I think that the tragedy, if he doesn't find Rabbi Milligan, is that Rabbi Milligan went to go get something for him, knowing, how sad it was that this was his birthday and he would not be celebrated. Right. And he just wanted to do something special for him. I mean, that's particularly tragic. This little kid, what he's gone through and what he's going through in this, I'm sure his journey's not over, but what happened in this episode today, is reminiscent of like the kids in The Wire. Like, if we followed him all the time and saw the stuff he went through, you understand how he grows up to be Mike Milligan. That this is just so messed up. And something this week that I liked is we stayed with this long enough that staying with this story this week, that there's stuff I want to know going on in the other storylines. But by the end of this, we stayed with it long enough. Like, there was really an emotional resonance to both the Rabbi and the Satchel story that hit harder than most of the stuff we've seen this season.
Yeah, I agree. It's also the character that we had mentioned last week, especially after we lost Steffi. We were like scrambling for, like, who are we supposed to care about, root for at this point? Who are the actual quote unquote good people? And I think you reminded me, like, oh yeah, Rabbi. Oh yeah, we got him. And like, except I have a bad feeling that's not going to go well either, as we see. Before I move on to the remainder of the episode, I do kind of want to point out something that occurred to me when it happened, especially when people are talking about like this season. Oh, it's not like Fargo and hey, another little Fargo trope, you could say. Feels like every season has to have like this insane, call it an act of God, act of nature, something just purely crazy, inexplicable, that came, do ex machina kind of, where the hell did that come from kind of an idea. Season 1 obviously has got the rain of fish,
Yeah.
Season 2's got the UFO. Cannot think if there's something in season 3 along those lines. I feel like there is, and it's just not occurring to me. Is it maybe something that causes that big bus accident? Maybe I can't remember. It's been a while, so I apologize. I didn't have time to research. Let's hope there is something there, just so it'd be cool. It'd be kind of funny if there's something every season. But if there isn't, it's still 2 of the last 3 seasons still works. We go back to the hotel, and if there's even one person remaining that was watching this who hadn't picked up on the Wizard of Oz stuff that was throughout the episode, with the black and white and the tornado and it's Kansas. Well, good Lord, when Satchel opens up the door, he steps out into, Technicolor.
Yeah.
So they really went for it there. And he overhears that guy next door, the guy who actually referred to as the hospital man.
Yeah.
And I like that you go over here a little bit of what he was saying. He was going, I am the Alpha and the Omega. Because like, oh, wait, I think we just went from freaking the Wizard of Oz to the 10 Commandments now.
Yeah, it's quoting Revelations.
Which is funny because it's Revelations, and that's when he'll, a minute later when, Satchel backs away from that guy's room, that's when he sees the weird side of the pastor and his wife/mother, and it's like, oh, there's a revelation for you. He goes back to his room, got a little confused because I was wondering, wait, so yesterday Rabbi gave you a knife to defend yourself, and this time there's actually I guess, the Rabbi had a gun, so he had two guns, and he left the gun?
I had that same question in my notes. I thought he gave him a knife, and I don't remember him leaving a gun. But
there it was.
He does come back to he did come back to the room, and it looked like I guess he left a second gun, or he had more than one gun.
Just seemed odd that he went through all the trouble of, here's a knife and how do you, whatever, but then he just left a gun on the bed. It just seemed like an odd thing, but not an error. It just seemed odd. So obviously, after a few moments, Satchel eventually leaves with the dog, and and as we said, he ends up on the road, and he sees that billboard, the future is now, and that's when, at that point, he has to make a decision what he's going to do, and he continues to walk down the road, because, the future is now. Hey, speaking of future, just because we like to connect, take a page from Seppenwall, from what you had pointed out during the week. Two can play at that game, motherfucker. I can have thoughts and look things up, within a minute of it airing. That's right, I did that. That's what I'm doing for you guys, free of charge. Mike Milligan, Season 2. Quote, "My point is sometimes the answer is so obvious you can't see it because you're looking too hard. You see, you can't leave because we're the future. And they're the past. The past can no more become the future than the future can become the past." So if we think, so I think everyone watching the show, realized within the first couple of episode, Satchel's got to be Mike Milligan. That's who it's going to be. It makes perfect sense. There's your big connecting piece. Oh, future is out. That's kind of an important moment here. Did Mike Milligan say something about the future? I feel like he did. I've looked that up. Oh, there's something. He says future like 3 or 4 times in that thing. There you go.
I wondered. I tell you what, I wondered and wanted to, and made a note that I'd like to look up is when Rabbi tells him with the knife and says, "Remember what I told you? Stab him in the knee, the chest, and the neck," or I forget the order he says. One of
them is stomach. That I know.
Yeah, I think he says like stab him in the knee, the stomach, and the chest. I want to see if Mike Milligan ever stabbed somebody in that order.
Oh, I don't know. Did he stab anybody in Season 2?
I don't know. It's been so long, I don't remember. But I wonder. I mean, there's been such an attention to detail, and the fact that the Rabbi told him that. I wonder if he ever killed anybody with a knife that way in the show now, because it. There are these callbacks to at least this character that we see that were there. It's been so long that I forgot, but now I'm on red alert to check and think and wonder about. But I mean, it's clear, and where this kid goes, it is really interesting, and the dog going with the kid. I mean, the scene of a boy and his dog walking down the street, and he knows, you see a couple of times in the episode that he knows the routine. If the rabbi ain't back after a certain time, he's dead or in jail, and he's got to keep moving on. And he does. He gets up and takes off. Now, did you think, was there like a Frankenstein vibe to that old man in the room next door? With that weird dude, with another callback, that guy had 2 different eyes, and the guy working on him had an eye and had like a monocle type thing on his eye that was black.
Right. Now, I noticed the weird stuff with the eyes, and that seemed to be running throughout the episode when you have, Omi himself with the clouded eye and such. I could see the Frankensteinian thing because see, what I thought I saw, again, just saw it once, didn't rewind it back, didn't pause it, whatever. The Frankenstein thing is not a bad call because I thought the other guy in the room was wearing something that looked like these little kind of goggles, which were kind of reminiscent of the goggles that Dr. Frankenstein wore in Frankenstein. That was the way it looked on my screen from where I was sitting. Again, I might be getting that totally wrong, but that's what it looked like to me. Because initially, when he first starts talking, I was like, "Oh, is he going to turn out to be the wizard?" Like that? Because of the way he's speaking to him. But they didn't go there. But that's what kind of occurred to me in the moment. By the way, I'm skimming through Mike Milligan's what he's done to see if he gets around to
see if he stabbed anybody.
I keep seeing all these mentions of him doing stuff, but I can't seem to find him actually stabbing anybody. Mention some people he kills, but they don't mention if he's stabbing. This Fargo wiki sucks. Anyway, I can't not spending any more time on this.
If only we'd been doing that all along. If only we'd done the Fargo wiki, we could have made it so well.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, I will finish up my thoughts. I've liked this season. I think this season could have benefited by having a few more episodes like this that kept the story focused and kept it on a couple of characters to build more emotional core with. By the end of this, we already like Rabbi Milligan, but by the end of this, we're damn near heartbroken for Satchel that he's a kid all alone with just a raggedy little dog walking down a road
Right.
on his birthday. I mean, what a terrible day for a small kid. And throughout the episode, he's mistreated. He's treated terrible by the people. The cop. I mean, I think what was crazy is, like, the cop in the car. He's obviously a little kid. Why do you want to have a gun? Why would you want to put a gun? I mean,
Right.
Like looking at him, he's not a man. He's a kid. And by the end of this, it's just heartbreaking. And if you had broken this up into a bunch of little snippets, it wouldn't have been nearly as powerful. And I thought, as a standalone episode that focused on just this story, for me, it worked. And I think this season could have used a few more of these episodes.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that's something we've been saying. And again, to make it clear, because there's maybe one listener who thinks we're saying otherwise, whoever she may be, whatever. I'm sorry. We like the season, and there are things we really like in it a lot. I mean, it's just and if there wasn't previous seasons of Fargo, I might be holding this in even higher regard. But that's not, number one, that's not the case. And number two, you're trying to do so much with limited time, and some shows are able to pull that off. Also with the knowledge that there's going to be future seasons with those characters. You can take a random show. I don't know, Game of Thrones. What the hell? Season 1, 1 million characters. You're juggling a lot of storylines. But they took their time with it. It's like, okay, this episode might only focus on these 2 or these 3 or these 4. And we can rotate it in and out. They did it in a way where it became a little bit more difficult to do that with the season. And like I said, I think my issue is, that doesn't really even bother me too much because I'm still able to follow everything. I wasn't like, I've never been confused by the season. Let's put it that way. I think maybe there's a few people, maybe if they'd cast them differently, or maybe if they just addressed their storylines differently, I might have more of a stake in what's going on with them. Like the Jason Schwartzman character specifically. I actually think I like the job that Chris Rock is doing. I get some of the criticism he's gotten here and there. I'm still enjoying it. It hasn't fazed me because I feel Chris Rock has handled the serious material pretty well. I mean, he's also worked off some really good actors as well, but I've had no issue with him. Jason Schwartzman, who I really like a lot. I really, Rushmore, Bored to Death, etc. Here, it's just, it just doesn't work quite as well as you want it to. Again, it's between calling a show an A+ or a B+ or whatever the heck letter grade we would ever give it. But yeah, it's interesting that this season we found out at some point that they were actually adding an extra episode, which may be, and I think we've heard it's more of a result of editing than actual, filming an entirely new episode. I don't know. We'll wait and see. Maybe Zack Snyder got in the editing room with them. I don't know what the hell happened.
Or Kurt Sutter.
Kurt Sutter. No, then we'd have to hear Katie Seagal singing for half.
They have to hear his wife sing.
Oh, that's awesome. But it's interesting that, so in some ways there's actually more of a season of Fargo than normal, but because of the way it was handled, it's almost like, gosh, maybe it would have been better if they had 15 episodes or something. Or maybe you just restructure it differently and, maybe you cut out a few things because I'm thinking about it. It doesn't feel like there's that much, but yet there is. I don't know.
No, I think the way I look at it is this, that there are probably some wonderful performances that could have been elevated. Like, for instance, Omi is played by Corey Hendricks, who's a wonderful actor. And, we barely know Omi other than he's just sort of a henchman side dude to Lloyd. We've seen a little bit of him here and there. But the criticism of Rock, I take issue with, and for this very reason. If you don't like Chris Rock because he's not too different than what you've seen him in other stuff, then you can't also love Timothy Olyphant, because what the figure he cuts and the role he plays, and it's almost a joke, like you said. I'm sure they cast him with a wink that for this part, but he doesn't completely change his voice, the way he acts, the way he walks to play this part, and we love it, right? Now, I'm not saying you have to love Chris Rock as much as you love Timothy Olyphant in this show, but you can't criticize Chris Rock for not, being completely off range when you have wonderful performances. But Timothy Olyphant didn't go method and do something crazy to change his character either.
I'm gonna say I agree with you, but at the same time, but I would, I would, to play devil's advocate, say, using someone like Alan Sepinwall. Sepinwall's actually knocked the Oliphant casting as well, because it's really? He's just doing this again? As much as he enjoys it, but still, it's kind of like you keep going to that same well again, but the actor doing the same thing again is almost goofy. Especially when the first episode of The Mandalorian comes out, and guess what he's doing again?
He's a marshal, but he's a space marshal.
Oh, shut up!
Now, if you really want to test him, he should play the older Eminem, and he should be Marshall Mathers in the biopic someday. So,
all right, so we're gonna turn off your microphone for the rest of the podcast now. Maybe that special guest star is going to show up in a couple weeks. Should take over. Really. What was I saying? Anyway, I really do like the season. I mean, I'll say this. Season 3, I ended up really only caring about some of the side characters, and I was intrigued where the stuff with the main villain was going to go, but I didn't really care about who the quote-unquote main characters were. I just didn't. I didn't care, as we talked about before. Anyone played by Ewan McGregor or Carrie Coon in that season, I just didn't care about. I wanted to. We podcasted about it. I tried to but especially when I look back on it, I was like, I cared more about the side ones. I'm more interested in what's going on with this season, although I'm not emotionally invested in any of the characters anymore. Because every time there's a character I might be emotionally invested in, oh, okay, now they're not there. And yeah, you can tell me it's the daughter at the funeral home, but we've spent so little time with her. So I got a strong sense of her in the very first episode and hardly at all since. I get these little moments with her, and there's nothing wrong with the actress or whatever, but can we be honest? Is there anything that's really that fascinating about it that makes me that interested in her? No, I'm sorry. I can't, I'm not, it's not, we'll see. She seems like she's about to play a major part when we see the next episode. And so even though part of me is like, really? So you're going to wait till the next to last episode of the season to suddenly tie her into everything? All right, whatever. Way to go, Holly. I started out wanting to make it clear that I really like the show, and it sounds like I was critiquing it again. Whatever.
Well, I think, I mean, we've been fairly consistent, but I will put a ribbon on this to say I really enjoyed this episode. I liked the way it went, and I'm interested to see what happens next week. But I really enjoyed tonight's episode, and it's been such a long time, and I know Dan will probably be upset to hear me say this. It's been such a long time since I've watched something in black and white that I sometimes forget how beautiful it can look. And I really enjoyed the black and white in this episode.
I think I'm recording with CJ now. Yeah. Dan's not the only one who would give you shit for that. Anyway, if you told me that every other show was going to be shot in black and white from this point on, I was like, excellent, go for it. Everything looks better in black and white. Sorry. The next episode will be the penultimate episode of the season, and it's actually titled Happy. I also noticed it's got two different directors credited for it, each of whom have done at least one or more episodes this season. So that's interesting. I wonder what story. Oh, it's editing. They probably cut together pieces from other episodes that the different directors did, and that's why they have two directors listed on it. Those sons of bitches. All right.
That makes sense.
That's the only thing I can think of why that would be the case. It just seems
if they recut it, if you film something, you would get credit for that as the director. So I think that makes perfect sense and fits into what we've suspected all along.
Yep. There you go. So I always forget if I do the little wrap-up thing first and then I talk about a few other things, or do I talk about the few other things first and then I do the wrap-up? You think after 285 podcasts I would have this down. I'll do the wrap-up after. Okay, so that's it for the Fargo episode. You and I will return next Sunday to talk about the penultimate episode. The last few weeks, at the end here, I then mention what the next podcast is usually going to be, the greatest TV drama episodes of all time edition, and what that's going to be. I've actually made a decision. It was going to be released this coming Friday. Has not been recorded yet, by the way. I made an executive decision to push it to the following Wednesday, simply because I love the idea that we released Dexter, the one that was based on an episode of Dexter, the day before Halloween. And as some of you already know, and now all of you are going to know, the next episode covered on that is number 16. It's the season 2 finale of Hannibal, Mizumuno. What better show to post the day before Thanksgiving? If you've watched Hannibal and their adoration of food, it's the only TV drama I can think of that if you watch the credits, they actually have a culinary consultant on every episode. That's a credit you don't see on most dramas. You're not going to see it on Law and Order SVU. And that's actually been what's taking up my viewing time for the past few days. I thought I'd just watch a few or several episodes. Dan is actually returning to podcast about Hannibal, just like the good old days, like 5 years ago. As I've mentioned online, rumor has it there will be another special guest that will be appearing on that podcast. Probably depends on how much one of the podcasters has to drink before recording. We will see. So I've just gotten through I just watched 2 seasons of it over the last several days, which means I can take a rest from the greatest TV drama episode binging, and I plan to watch, because everyone keeps telling me about it, and I wanted to watch it anyway. I'm going to watch back-to-back Queen's Gambit and season 4 of The Crown, which just came out, which I have to watch, of course. I'm still have not made up my mind if we're going to do if there's going to be a podcast about The Crown or not. I just don't know if time and energy, effort level, if it's there or not. But we'll say it's a definite maybe. So we'll see. But I definitely got time to watch all this stuff, because the one after Hannibal, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but that one isn't going to be due till December 4th. So I got a little bit of I got myself a window of time to watch some crap now. So exciting to tell everybody that. So let's wrap up the podcast here. So if you enjoyed this podcast, I hope you did. That last minute excluded. You probably enjoy hanging out on our Facebook page as well. It's the Serious TV Drama Podcast page. Like the page, and you can join the conversation about shows like Fargo and so many others. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe to our feed there, and you can also rate and review us. You can apparently find us on Stitcher.com. I'm just waiting for one download off that damn thing. It's never going to happen. What? Didn't cost me any money. Don't care. But the page to go to find our podcast there is Stitcher.com/podcast/ the-serious-tv-drama-podcast. But if you don't want to go there, then just go to the archive of all 285 of our podcasts. That, of course, is stvdpodcast.podbean.com. And finally, you can follow us on Twitter. Our handle there is at STVD Podcast. That's STVD as in Serious TV Drama. So, Brian, thank you so much once again for staying up late on a Sunday night to talk about Fargo.
Oh, I enjoyed it. I look forward to the next 2 episodes.
Yeah. And hopefully folks have checked out. And if they haven't, you have plenty of time to check it out now. Brian was actually recorded last week with me. We covered that episode of Mr. Robot, 407 proxy authentication required. I've actually listened to the podcast myself. I would say about 97% of it is a really good podcast. It's really worth listening to. I'm not going to tell you where the bad 3% is. It's not you, Brian. Well, it's the risk of. Well, you're a lawyer. Isn't there a rule when you're lawyering? You never ask a question you don't already know the answer to.
Yeah.
There should maybe be a rule in podcasting. Never ask the other podcaster a question he doesn't already know you're going to ask him. Because whenever you people do that, Dan used to do this to me as well, and I didn't see it coming. I'm like, You asked me a question during that, and we're going, I don't know how to answer that question because it might be awkward for me. Anyway, never mind that. Awkward. So anyway, Brian, thanks for being here.
Well, Scott, I appreciate it. And let me say to the folks out there, I hope that even if you don't listen to all of them, we'd love it if you listen to all of them. But if you listen to the other episodes of the favorite episodes of all time, favorite drama episodes of all time, that I have found myself a couple of times just going and watching that episode and remembering how great shows were and watching several episodes of those shows. So I hope that if you've never watched the shows, that's a reason for you to watch them. But Scott's put a lot of work into it to do this and coordinate it. So if you get a chance, please listen. Thanks for listening tonight, and we'll see you next week.
I couldn't have said it better myself, so I won't. Good night, everybody.